everybody. Welcome to the Phillies Sports Convo. I'm Jason Lee. This is episode number 18. I got a really cool guest coming up. He hosts a great show every morning called Trending in the AM. Why did I draw a blank for a second? Trending in the... Because I view the show all the time. Trending in the AM. Talk to Phil Steifel in just a second. Before we do that, we just want to remind you there's a really cool way you can help support the podcast, and it's a fun way too. We've got this great merch shop on our website, phillysportsconvo.com. So it's actually shop.phillysportsconvo.com. We've got t-shirts on there and sweatshirts and sweatpants and all kinds of accessories, desk pads, mouse pads. We got tumblers. We got coffee mugs with the Philly Sports Convo logo. So if you want to check it out, I would greatly appreciate that. Also, while I'm plugging things, if you're in the Warminster area, every Tuesday night looking for something to do, you have something to do now. Join me at the Blue Bar. It's on York Road between Street Road and County Line Road. I do a trivia night there every Tuesday night from 7 until 9. And maybe I'll get our guest to join me at one of these trivia nights. But the problem is he lives so far from me, so he doesn't get to come to the trivia night. And I haven't been to his pizza shop yet, which I hear is fantastic in Kennett Square, Fox's Pizza Den. He is Phil Steifel, the host of Trending in the AM on the Edge of Philly Sports Network. Phil, you know I'm a fan. I love to have you here. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me on, and just start thinking about it as we're doing this show here. I'm going to have you quiz me. Give me some trivia questions from your last trivia show, and we're going to see how, because I'm terrible at trivia, but I'm curious what kind of trivia you're running, and I got to test my knowledge. So you're going to have to give me some trivia questions see how stupid I really am here.
I'm not prepared. I don't. I wish I could remember some of them offhand, but Phil, I'm getting old, and I don't sleep very much. So it's a bad combination. My memory is shot. I'll have to find my last trivia sheet. I'll figure it out. One time when you're answering one of my questions and I bring you up full, I'll sneak away and I'll see if I can find it real quick. All right. But hey, we've got a lot to talk about. And like I said, I get to watch your show not as often as I'd like to, because when you're on, I'm at work. But when I'm off, I check you out all the time. I send you comments. And for anybody who hasn't watched Phil's show, it's really cool because, first of all, it's Phil answering comments, so people can comment while he's doing the show. Trending in the AM. There's the shirt. Yeah, and Phil will. It's like a sports talk show, but it's not phone calls. People just kind of, put their comments online, and the comments appear on the screen, and Phil answers them. And I really love the format of the show. I love how you get listeners involved. Before we start talking sports, just give me an idea of how the show has grown since you've been doing it.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's my baby. It's something that I've always wanted to do, a daily show. The idea for it came years and years ago when Angelo eventually announced that at some point Angelo Cataldi was going to retire. I'm like, well, I'm going to take over the morning airwaves. And I know there's a lot of conversation on social media about the media, the radio channels, and the way they do things. And my goal has always been to create a platform where people's opinions, I always use the tagline, where your opinions actually matter. I don't think there is enough, radio shows that actually care about the listeners. They want to hear their voice. They want to hear their opinions. My opinions on my show really don't matter. My show is about letting you have your opinion heard, and I think there's a real audience for it. And over the years, we've grown. I mean, today's show, we're recording this on the 4th of July. I mean, there was about 3,000 people that watched the show this morning.
That's
so
awesome.
There is an audience. People do want to have their voice heard, their opinions heard, whether it's in comments. If I had a cool son like you, I'm sure I could take phone calls, but I don't have a cool son that's going to set me up with the ability to take phone calls, but I would do it because people do want to have real debates. They don't want to be laughed at. They don't want to be bashed. They don't want to, go with just straight hot takes all the time. They want to discuss sports. So that's the goal of Trending in the AM, is to make sure everyone has a chance to have their opinion heard.
Well, first of all, I know my son Ethan would gladly help you out if there was free pizza involved, and I know you've got a pizza connection, so I think we might be able to. You and I should talk. We might be able to make that happen at some point soon. But yeah, you know what, and that's what I like about the show, because you answer every comment. You don't, if it's I don't want to use the word stupid. That's too strong of a word. But if it's a borderline comment that might be like, wait, what's that person saying? You don't you don't diminish the comment. You don't knock people down like some people on the radio do. That's why I've always enjoyed when I get to see your show. I'm trying to remember how you and I first got in touch, because I had you on my old TV show a couple times. But did I stumble across you and just reach out? Do you remember how we first got in touch?
I mean, we definitely must have interacted at some point on Twitter at one point. And I had you on the very, very early incarnations of Trending the AM, which is now almost 3 years into it now.
Yeah, I do remember that.
I did have you on the show, and that's where we really started talking. So yeah, I'm not sure how it all started, but that is how our relationship started, with me, getting you on the show. And I still remember that show because, look, you're not just a sports guy. You're not just a TV guy. I mean, you've been in the radio business. You're just a guy that's just grinded away so much. And it's something that, gives younger people, not that I'm young, I'm an old man too, but gives us, early birds in this business something to look for, because you look towards, because you do things the right way. And that's what I want to do. I want to do things the right way. So I look for people that do things the right way, and to model what I want to be remembered as, when I do this.
Well, I appreciate that. And while we're giving compliments, and I promise for anybody watching or listening, we will get to the sports talk momentarily, but and I've told you this on your show, and I've told you this off the air too. I admire that you drag yourself out of bed in the morning to do this 90-minute show. You said today, or this morning on the 4th of July, was almost 2 hours. You drag yourself out of bed to do the show, which you're the only one on most mornings. You're the only one talking on the show. And if you're talking for 90 straight minutes, people may not realize it takes a lot out of you. It is exhausting, both physically and mentally exhausting. But then you go to your pizza shop that you own, Fox's Pizza down in Kennett Square, and you work a full work day. And I've always respected that. So, I appreciate your compliments to me, but man, you're doing it the right way too.
Yeah, I don't think people understand how much work goes into doing a show by yourself 90 minutes every day, and then going and putting in 60, 70 hours a week at a pizza shop. Honestly, I like, not to get personal, and like you said, we'll talk sports in a second, but owning a restaurant for over 16 years, when COVID happened, that's when I started podcasting and writing for websites and stuff like that. I don't know if I would have survived as a business owner through the COVID ordeal, not to talk COVID or anything, if I didn't start this show and this hobby. It gave me something to take the edge, take away the stress, take away, that aspect, almost like an outlet to get away from the real world.
Sure.
And then I didn't expect, when I started this back in 2020, which it was just a nightly, once a week show back then, I didn't expect it to get to where it is now. I just needed I needed that release, that outlet to get over all the drama in the world. And now here we are doing it.
Yeah. And you're doing great. So, all right, I turn it to the whole sports thing. I was thinking about this driving home from work. So in a week where you've got, just this morning on the 4th, we learned that the Phillies have 3 All-Stars in the starting lineup. The Phils, they won a series in Chicago this week. The Sixers have been making moves. You got Paul George in town. But having said all of that, the big story is about a legendary radio guy who got himself into trouble. I don't know if did you talk about this at all on your show? The whole Howard Eskin situation?
Yeah, I talked about it a lot. Well, I've talked about the media in general a lot lately. And I absolutely covered the Howard Eskin thing. And Jason, you've been around a very long time in the media business. And I'm 43 today, the 4th of July, when we're recording this. This is the anniversary of the passing of my father, who brought all the sports fanaticness into my life.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid in the 80s, early 90s, riding around the car, listening to Howard Eskin, every single day. Howard Eskin is one of the guys that made me want to, get into, at some point in my life, sports broadcasting, radio, TV, whatever it may be. And not to get too deep into it, we put some of these guys, some of these legends up on this pedestal pretty high. And as I knock my mic over, it's one of those things that it's heartbreaking to see that these guys we put up so high, some of them still have some demons in their closet. Some of them still, they might not be the people we think they are on the radio or on TV. And it's a shame. It really is a shame that this is, where we're at right now with some of these guys like Howard Eskin, because I idolized him growing up. was the guy that I wanted to be like. So
Yeah, no, and that's very well put. And I have a similar situation because when he began. Okay, so everybody remembers him from WIP, and he was part of the early days, the beginning of WIP as a sports station back in '86. But prior to that, there was an FM talk station on 96.5, which is now what the new 96.5 they call it. Ironically, owned by Odyssey, which also owns WIP. But back in the day, it was a talk station. The call letters were WWDB. And that's where Eskin got his start on the radio in Philly, and he was doing sports talk, not every day, it was like once a week, but that's when he got the reputation of being really abrasive and real caustic and, shouting and berating callers, but he made it work for himself. But, and having said all of that, the fact that I'm in the business, I've been in his company many times. I worked for B101, which is in the same building as WIP. Used to bump into him. He was always really nice to me. And when I was a kid, when I was in 7th grade, I wrote him a letter when he was at Channel 29. He had they had just launched the 10 o'clock news. He sent me back this really cool autographed picture. But you said heartbreaking, and that's exactly how I describe it. And maybe because I've dealt with the guy and he was really nice to me personally, it is kind of heartbreaking. But by the same token, it's like, all right, it's heartbreaking, but then you hear about what he did. And if the whole banishment from Citizens Bank Park was Odyssey's idea, there must be something to it. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm no lawyer. I'm not going to get the legalities of this or that, but, I've heard rumors. Just like you saying all the nice things about him, I've heard rumors from other people on the complete other side of the equation. I don't want to name names, but
Sure.
There's a Sixers beat reporter that I've done some work. I've had some on my show as a guest before, that when he was getting his start 2-3 years ago, Howard was very abrasive towards some of the new up-and-comers, whether it was because he was worried about being pushed out by the new younger crowd or what. So I've heard good things about Howard Eskin, but I've also heard negatives. But when we put these guys up on pedestals, we choose to sometimes block out some of the negative.
Yeah.
Which then we kind of forget that that everybody's got skeletons in their closet. Everyone's done something bad or wrong or said the wrong thing to the wrong person. Even I have probably at some point done that.
I can't believe that.
But no, trust me. There's a reason why most of my employees think I'm an a-hole.
No,
so,
they do. They don't.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people that don't like me. That is for sure. But it is what it is. But in this day and age, you say the Phillies and Citizens Bank Park have banned him. The Sixers did come out late last night and say that he's suspended from going to the Wells Fargo Center as well. Which how long ago was it? Was it during 2001 when he had his run-in with Allen Iverson and the Sixers suspended him back then? For a good, I think it was like 6 months they suspended him.
I forgot
from
about
reporting
that.
on the team.
Yeah.
So, this is not the first time Howard Eskin has had a run-in of some kind. And let's not. I don't even want to dive into the '97 story.
Oh gosh, yeah, the roses.
I mean, I don't even want to get into that. But there are reasons to believe that this kind of thing, it's not. It shouldn't be shocking to us, is the way I should say it.
Yeah, and I got to think, it's like you wonder, how does this all end? And WIP is still saying that he's going to be on the air, which honestly shocks the hell out of me. And I really think, I think before Eskin goes back on the air, because, okay, so he's on every Saturday, but apparently, so they say, he had a previously scheduled day off this Saturday, so he's not going to be on the air this weekend anyway. So I got to think before a week from Saturday, before he's supposed to be back on again, I got to think they're going to rethink this, especially if the Flyers come out and say he's banned. If the Eagles say he's banned, he can't do his job on the radio during the Eagles games. I don't see this ending well for him, and it's just, you want to talk about a fall from grace for a Philadelphia broadcasting legend. It's look, none of us have a crystal ball, but do you see him, or do you think we'll ever hear him again on WIP? Because I think we may have heard him for the last time.
I find it very hard to believe that he'll be back on the air. But on the flip side of the equation, and maybe this is more of a question back to answer your question. You've been in the radio business longer. You've worked for Audacity and all these other companies before. you got the ESP situation with the afternoon show, and they have just completely, ignored it, blown it over. They refuse to let anybody comment on it. He's not allowed to comment on it, and they just keep sweeping it under the rug. And I don't know if it's, like whether it's a legal thing, whether it's a publicity thing. They just hope it goes away. Look, Howard Eskin still has a huge stream of supporters. The older generation that grew up on him still do love to listen to him, talk sports. So is it going to be a case where they just let it sweep it under the rug, let him take a couple of weeks off, and then just slide him back in? I don't know. I, like you, don't understand how. Here's my question for you, Jason. If you did what Howard Eskin would do at PHL 17, would you still have a job today?
I'd be fired instantly. Yeah.
If one of my employees did something like that to one of my customers, they'd be fired instantly. But Howard Eskin is Howard Eskin. He's a legend. I don't know how it ends right for him, but because of his namesake, because of the advertising dollars, because of the fact that there's still a lot of people that do tune into him, even though it's just once a week.
Yeah.
Maybe they find a way to just hide him for a little bit and then bring him back.
Well, at the very least, they need to suspend him, I would think.
Absolutely.
And, I feel for Spike Eskin, his son, who's now the afternoon co-host. Apparently Spike addressed it briefly the other day and said, look, he's him, I'm me, and that's all I'm going to say about it. But besides that, WIP, they haven't talked about it at all. You mentioned Angelo Cataldi at the top of the show. Of course, he's retired, but he's got a blog now. And I don't know if you saw this, Phil. Angelo blogged about it the other day, and he basically said WIP's in the business of talk, and they're not talking about it. That seems very hypocritical, and it doesn't make sense. And I totally agree with him.
I almost sometimes feel like it's better to just address it.
Oh, sure. Put it out there. Absolutely.
Get out in front of it. Make a statement. If you don't want to take questions on it on the air, that's fine, but address it.
Yeah.
Look, I was wrong. I made a mistake. I'm going to try to be a better person and learn from this. That's how you become a better person.
Sure.
And people would rather hear that genuine answer, even if you just say, yeah, look, I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. I was wrong. I read a situation wrong. Whatever the situation was, address it.
Yeah,
be out in front of it. That's how I run my business. You know what I mean? If there's
agree.
ever a problem, if there's ever a customer with a mistake, jump out in front of it and deal with it.
Yeah. And I think by and large, this is a very forgiving society. So it might take a while, but if he did come out and say pretty much what you just said, I think there are people who would forgive him. But all right, well,
maybe not immediately, but
right.
Eventually they would accept him back on the airwaves a lot quicker if he just said, "Look, I'm sorry."
Yeah.
Look at Mike Missinelli. I mean, you've had Mike Missinelli on the show before. I know you've talked with him before. I mean, he's had some problems, legally, and he's about to come back on the air, the rumors say, because you know what? He addressed his problems. He addressed his mistakes. He went away for a little bit, and he's going to be back. And I'm sure his show will be highly rated again once he is back.
Yeah, he got into a fight with a producer at WIP, if I remember. That was the story. By the way, and I have no inside information. This is just my own feeling on this. I don't think he's going to be back on the Fanatic because I know that parent company, and I don't think they're going to pay him what it's going to take to get him back on the air. Mike, God bless him. He's done very well for himself. He doesn't need the gig. Okay, he could sit back. He could do his podcast and whatever freelance stuff he wants to do. And he's part owner of a winery in Cape May Courthouse. He can just sit back and do all that and live the good life and not deal with the daily grind of radio and all the aggravation and politics of radio unless it's worth his while. And the economics of radio these days, unless your names are Preston and Steve, you're not making big money anymore. That's just how I see it.
I absolutely agree with you on that. The only reason why I would think he would be back on the Fanatic is because the Fanatic is struggling, ratings wise, financially wise, especially with the whole fiasco with losing Anthony Gargano to that other PHLY All City team. They're really struggling, and Missinelli will bring in the ratings if they could convince him financially to go about the grind again. So as a business person, I understand where they might have to cut some of their other people to afford them. But big picture, the last time the Fanatic even competed with WIP in the ratings was when Missinelli was still on the air. So
no doubt,
that's the only thing there.
No doubt about it. And look, while we're on the subject of radio, I mean, I just I don't understand what the Fanatics doing, because they just did cut a bunch of people a month or two ago, and it's like, how do you expect to compete with a powerhouse that is WIP if you're not equipping your radio station properly? What do they expect? I mean, I don't get their game plan. I know, you're on the air, and I don't know how much you hear the morning show, the new morning show now, because you get up and you go on the air at 8 o'clock yourself. But Kincaid and Salchunas, I'm a big John Kincaid fan. They don't have Kincaid quarterbacking the show. He's just kind of like a sidekick, and I think that's an insult to a guy who doesn't deserve it. But I guess as long as the check clears, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, to answer that part of it was that I don't listen to the radio. I don't. I really do. Truly, my motto is turn the dial off, turn on a content creator, because where all these guys are doing great work on the radio, there's also 10 times more great content creators, and not just the small timers. There's big timers. There's people who've been grinding, and not to point to myself, but there are countless great people out there, male and female, that are putting out really good content on a daily basis. So when I'm listening to sports talk in my car, I've got YouTube plugged and played into my car, and I'm listening to all the great Philadelphia content creators out there that are trying to make a name for themselves. I'm trying to support them because I know what it was like. I mean, I'm not trying to say I've made it, because I haven't. I'm still trying to find more listeners. But I remember what it was like when I was first starting out 4 or 5 years ago doing this, and they need the support. So I try my best to either listen to music, which is my main go-to, but other than that, I'm listening to the great content creators in this city instead of the dial, because if I listen to the radio, then I'm kind of hypocrite, and I don't like being a hypocrite.
I love that. I love that. So you walk the walk and you talk the talk as well. That's very cool. All right, let's get to some baseball. We talked about we kind of touched on it at the top. 3 Phillies All-Stars in the starting lineup. That hasn't happened since '82. How old were you in '82, Phil? Were you even born yet in '82? You were 2. Okay.
Yeah, I was born in 1980, so
okay.
I was 2 then.
Well, so at the '82 All-Star game, it was Rose, Manny Trio, and Mike Schmidt that started in the infield for the National League. So this year you're going to have Harper, you're going to have Turner, you're going to have Bohm. Just your thoughts on that, and how deserving they are.
Well, I mean, we all know Bryce Harper. He's one of the best baseball players on the planet. He obviously deserves it, but he's obviously going to get it. Trey Turner, obviously, big paid, high free agent, worth every penny. He's great. I like to talk, and I spent a lot of time this week talking about Alec Bohm on my show and how deserving he is. If you really go back and think about it, his rookie year was the COVID short year, and he came up one place short of the rookie of the year. He finished in second place that year. And he had the whole I effing hate this place scenario play out where he got caught lipping that to the fans. And just to see the turnaround for this young kid, and the fact that he's hitting near 300 right now, he's got 70-plus RBIs, 11. I mean, it's just so special to watch how this kid has stayed focused, stayed the course, not let the outside distractions get him down, all the social media people bashing his defense and whatnot. This kid's a great kid. This kid's a great baseball player, and this kid's got a bright future, and I think it's a well-deserved honor for Alec Bohm because let's be honest, I mean, Harper spent time – he's on the DL right now, or the IL right now. Trey Turner has been out this year. There have been a lot of revolving doors with the injuries on the Phillies. He's been a constant and a consistent part of this team for a few years now. So I think it's a well-deserved honor, and an honor that I kind of feel like I saw coming right from the get-go with him.
And you mentioned the whole situation with IF and hate this place. How brilliant did he handle that? And it's like, I wonder, did somebody pull him aside and say, you know what, just step up and be honest? Or was that all him? Because let's face it, we all know the natural instinct in a situation like, I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that. But he admitted it. And it almost seemed like that's when things started to turn around for him.
Think about it this way. We just spent all this time talking about Howard Eskin. Alec Bohm got out in front of it. And I don't think anybody got to him or got in his ear. Because if you think about it, it happened. And then literally that post game is when he said, yeah, I said it. Yeah. My bad. It's just the frustration of the moment. It was literally and immediately after the game, he admitted to it before it became a big deal.
Yeah.
So, it just shows wise maturity beyond his years. It shows that he does truly care about this. And one thing Philadelphia fans of all sports teams love, they love to see the passion and the emotions worn on the sleeve. He had the emotion of, I effing hate this place, but it was just the frustration in the moment. And he addressed it immediately. And we embraced him even more so because of it. And I think young athletes coming up in the city and in all 4 Philly teams, they can all look to Alec Bohm on how he handled the down to get to this point. They can all learn something from him. I mean, he's what, 26 years old, 25 years old? He's still a kid, but they can all look to him for that example of what kind of how to handle the Philly crowd. Yeah. Everyone talks about how the Philly fans, Philly media are so tough to deal with. They can look at Alec Bohm as an example on how to handle it.
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And and I don't buy into the whole Philly fans are tough. I mean, it's the whole East Coast thing. It's Philly, New York, it's Boston. There's nothing wrong with wanting excellence. I mean, I've had Larry Bowa on the show a couple times, and he will tell you that the Philadelphia fans made him better. That's the impact I think that the Philly fans have. So talking about the All-Stars, so pitchers and reserves aren't coming out till, is it Sunday, I guess, is when they make the announcement, Sunday? Who else do you foresee? I mean, Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez. I mean, he should get a shot, shouldn't he? Who else do you see would be deserving of an All-Star nod?
Well, I mean, theoretically, you could put the entire Phillies pitching staff on the All-Star team. At this point, give or take 1 or 2 guys. Obviously, that won't happen. What I foresee happening is different than what I think should happen. I do think Christopher Sanchez, NL Pitcher of the Month for June, just got a big extension, then went out and, most people get a big extension or a big recognition, then fall flat on their face for a moment or two. He gets his big extension and goes out and throws a 9-inning complete game shutout last week. Yeah. He's pitching today on the 4th of July while we're recording this. I think Christopher Sanchez deserves it. I think it'll be Wheeler that goes to represent the Phillies because he's having a Cy Young candidate. I think Ranger Suarez absolutely should and will get on the All-Star team. But Christopher Sanchez has a case to be made as one of the best pitchers in baseball this year. And then you look at the bullpen. I mean, Alvarado, Hoffman, Kirkgreen, Matt Strahm has been fantastic this year.
He has.
Doesn't get the credit he deserves. They all should. I foresee 2 guys, Wheeler and Ranger Suarez, making it. Sanchez, Matt Strahm, lesser-known names should get it. We'll just see if they do or not.
Yeah, and it always at least a couple of people fall victim to the fact that every team has to have at least one All-Star representative. I've always hated that rule. What do you think about that?
Yeah, they're the only sport that I know football and basketball do not have that rule. I'm not sure if hockey does or not, but I don't think it's
so.
Necessary. I don't think so either. I'm not positive. But you know what? Does someone on the Oakland Athletics really deserve it over someone like Christopher Sanchez? I just think the best player should go. I don't know. I still do thoroughly enjoy the All-Star game in baseball. I know I was on your show last year talking about ways they could change the All-Star festivities and stuff like that. But
that's right.
The All-Star game is still a fun event for me in baseball. It's going to be here in Philly in 2026. You better well know I'm going to be in the outfield trying to catch home run balls during the home run derby, like every other fan is going to be out there doing it. Look, get it. You want to get every city to have some. You let an Oakland Athletic in. Maybe the Oakland Athletic fans, the 3 of them that exist, might actually tune in. That's what you're trying to do with that. I just think it's unfair to someone like Christopher Sanchez, who rightfully deserves that nod over some of the other people.
I'll tell you, fun fact, I was at the 1996 All-Star game at the Vet, which I think, obviously we know the Phillies weren't very good that year. I think Ricky Bottalico was the only Phillies representative. I think it was Ricky Bottalico. But it was pretty cool. You know what I miss? And one of the things I always loved, and this may sound really stupid because it really doesn't mean anything, but I always loved how in the baseball All-Star game, until recently, it wasn't a generic, National American League uniform. They wore their individual team uniforms. They stopped doing that. I wish they'd go back. I like seeing the individual team uniforms and just seeing like the team picture with all the different uniforms together. I just think it's so cool, and I wish they would have. They got to bring that back.
I didn't honestly think about that, but you know what? You're right, and I kind of might miss that as well. I guess that's a new thing for me to campaign for now on social media. On top of my changes to the the home run derby and stuff like that. I guess it's time for me to have a new campaign now.
Refresh my memory. What were your changes to the home run derby? I should remember.
The home run derby, I suggested that you have a former star from the city you hosted in the Derby. So, like, if they were in Seattle, Ken Griffey Jr.
Yes, that's right.
Still swing it back. You go to San Francisco, Barry Bonds, St. Louis. If you're in Philly, maybe Mike Schmidt probably can't hit a home run anymore, but you could probably get Ryan Howard.
Ryan Howard, sure.
Tell me that wouldn't help ratings, or you do some form of, head-to-head matchup with a former player with a current player and see who could do it. I would tune in to watch Ken Griffey Jr. swing a bat.
Yeah,
I would, and I've seen videos of him doing it in the last year or two, and that's what made me peak, because I think it was in Seattle last year or 2 years ago when I came up with this idea, and I'm like, Ken Griffey Jr. should be out there right now, and who wouldn't want to watch the kid swinging a bat right now? So.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea. You mentioned Barry Bonds, and I don't think you and I have ever talked about this. The whole Hall of Fame thing with the whole steroid situation. Have you ever made your opinion of that known, and if so, what is it?
Well, I've made it known multiple times, and I've also made it known that I'm allowed. And everyone says that when you change your opinion, you're flip flopping. No, to me, I'm evolving my opinion. When I was a younger, more inexperienced, less knowledgeable person, I was against Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame. But I've learned he's a huge part of history. And I don't know if you know this. If you Google the whole thing, the mission statement of the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame says to preserve. A little clip in it is to preserve the history of the game of baseball. Is Barry Bonds not part of the history of baseball for good or bad? He's one of the biggest parts of baseball's history. So you need to put him in there at the very least to teach the kids of today what he did wrong. So I really truly believe he should be in the Hall of Fame. Before he did steroids, he was the greatest player on the planet already.
Yeah.
He made mistakes. Baseball turned a blind eye to those mistakes. Bud Selig turned a blind eye to get us back from the strike of 94 by allowing this stuff. So if you're truly believe your mission statement is to preserve the history of the game, he has to be in it. Roger Clemens has to be in it. Maybe Mark McGwire. I think he's a fringe Hall of Fame player, realistically. But they should all be in it if they're worthy of being in the Hall, because you want to teach the kids about the history, not have this, question mark right out there.
Well, and think about this, and I know they're for two very different reasons, but you have the all-time home run king not in the Hall of Fame, the all-time hit king not in the Hall of Fame. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Pete Rose is a great person. I don't know if I ever told you this. When I was a kid, and because of his time with the Phillies, Pete Rose was my all-time favorite player. In this basement, on the far wall here, I have a plaque hanging up of the photo of Pete Rose standing on first base in Cincinnati when he broke Ty Cobb's hit record. He's standing on the first base. He's got Steve Garvey standing behind him from the San Diego Padres. So I was always a huge Pete Rose fan. When the Phillies honored the '80 team a couple years ago, were you watching when Rose was in the booth with T-Mac and John Kruk? The guy knows he's on television, yet he's spewing out dirty word after dirty word. It's like, come on, man, have a little class. So the guy has no class, all right? I'm not going to say he's a great person, but on the baseball field, if you're a father teaching your kid baseball, that's the guy that you wanted to watch. You want your kid to play like that guy. And the whole gambling thing, let's face it, this was 89, so you were what, 9 years old? Okay, I remember this a little bit. When he was banned in 89, right after they banned him, that's when they made the rule that anybody banned wasn't eligible for the Hall of Fame. It wasn't like that when he was first banished. Then they made the change. So to me, put him back on the ballot. Let's see if he gets voted in. I think he should be in.
Yeah, I mean, I think someday he will get in, but it'll be well past his time.
Right, he won't see it
in this world.
Yeah,
he won't get to see it. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. He got trouble gambling as a manager. He never got caught gambling as a player.
Correct.
So he was not a Hall of Fame manager. He was a good manager for the Reds, but he wasn't a Hall of Fame manager. You're putting him in the Hall of Fame for his baseball playing.
Agreed.
You're banning him for his coaching mistakes. So as a player, you cannot have a Hall of Fame. Again, the mission statement, preserve the history of the game. Pete Rose is a massive part, literally the all-time hits leader.
Yep.
I don't know if his hits record will ever be broken. I really doubt it will ever be broken. So how can you have a Hall of Fame and not have the all-time hitter, in the Hall of Fame.
Well, yeah, I mean his record, and let's face it, there's a list of records that will never be broken. Cy Young's 511 wins, and Pete Rose had 4,256 hits. So I mean, I'm no math whiz, but if you get 200 hits per season for 20 years, that's 4,000, right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, who's playing 20 years and who's getting 200 hits a year for 20 straight years? It's not happening. So you're right; it will never be broken, and he should be in the Hall of Fame. But I agree. I do think I agree with you. It will eventually happen, but he's not going to be around. I mean, he's what, in his late 70s at this point. I don't know.
He's definitely getting up there.
Yeah.
Again, I baseball, the Hall of Fame needs to. There's a lot wrong with the Hall of Fame, the way the voting process goes. Everything. But if you put as a business, of any business, if you have a mission statement for the Phillies Sports Convo, you better live to the mission statement. And if baseball has this mission statement, they're not going to let them in. They better change the mission statement, because their mission statement is not being followed through with, in my opinion. And I love baseball. I've never been to the Hall of Fame. I've always wanted to go to the Hall of Fame. I will go at some point. But I think they're contradicting themselves by not having Barry Bonds, by not having Roger Clemens, Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. So, and I think it was the Phillies need to maybe start the reconciliation to get him in the Hall of Fame by maybe putting him on their Wall of Fame, or maybe having a Pete Rose Day. I know you can't do it, but maybe they should be the one, because we don't win the World Series in 1980 without bringing Pete Rose in to get us over the hump.
Yeah, you're right. And but here's the thing. You may remember this. So, what year was it? It was pre-pandemic. They were going to put Pete Rose on the Wall of Fame. I don't know if you remember this. And MLB approved it. That's when the story came out about Pete Rose with underage girls. Remember that story?
Now that you're saying it, yes, I do.
Yeah. So obviously the Phillies, they kind of had to. They canceled it. So the alumni weekend that year was just kind of like a reunion. They didn't put anybody up on the wall. And I agree with you. I mean, I think that would have started the process had he gone up on the wall then. So it's his own fault, okay? It's his own fault. He's not a good man. He was a good baseball player, but I would love to see him in the Hall of Fame. And you reminded me. I'm going to write myself a note. I need to come up with a mission statement for the Philly Sports Convo. I don't have one. You have one for trending in the AM?
I don't have a mission statement. I just got a catchphrase, and that's it. I think the catchphrase is good enough,
And people remember the catchphrase, so it works. It works. All right. So I want to get to some Sixers because, gosh, we've already talked for a long. You and I could talk all day, I think, Phil. It's
really good. Like I told you before we went live, or started recording. I've got nothing but time today, so.
Okay. Well, listen, you're a talker and I'm a talker. You get two talkers together, and we talk. So, the Paul George signing. All right. Hearing people's reaction to it, to me, it seemed like it was either one extreme or the other. It was, hey, this is great. It's Embiid and it's Paul George and it's Maxey and what a trio they're going to be. Or it's this is terrible. You're paying a 34-year-old guy $200 million. What's his contract going to look like when he's 38 years old? Honestly, Phil, I fall on the latter side of that argument. Where do you fall?
I fall on both sides of the argument.
Okay.
Because, it's a massive contract for a 34-year-old that in 2 to 3 years might be washed. It has an injury history, that has never won anything.
Right.
Back when he was in Indiana, he did early in his career make an Eastern Conference Finals with a young Indiana Pacers squad, but that's it. But also, I can't. You literally went through the entire process for this offseason to have all this cap space, to have all these tradable assets, to have everything. The best player available, Paul George. Daryl Morey got Paul George, the best player available. He had to overpay, sure, but he got the best player. If we win a title, no one's going to care about what 38-year-old Paul George is doing.
Agreed.
But if we don't, we're going to go down and say Daryl Morey was the biggest dope in Philadelphia GM history if we don't win the title. So I can see both sides of the equation really, really clearly. And everybody was criticizing the New York Knicks, who went super aggressive. They made a massive trade for Mikal Bridges, Nova product. then gave OG Anunoby a huge, massive contract. Actually, I think theoretically more money than Paul George is making. But you know what? The Knicks GM saw that this Knicks team was really close, and they swung for the fences. I never criticize an executive of seeing that picture's right there. We're almost at that title. Let's just go all in. We'll worry about the consequences later. So that's what signing Paul George is. It's we're this close as the Sixers. If we're healthy, we're this close for the Sixers. Let's go for it. If not, we'll deal with it. So that's why I kind of fall on both things. I think it completely blow up in his face, but it's the best option.
Listen, I agree that, if they win a title, even if they suck for 3 years after, if they win a title next season but stink for the 3 years after, yeah, I agree. No one's going to care. But the question is, even with Paul George, are they better than Boston? And if the answer is no, then what are we doing? Why are we doing it?
You're hoping that this is not the end of the offseason. You're hoping that they still have 5 first-round picks that they could trade this offseason. They got some young kids that they just drafted they could trade. They still have Paul Reed's very, very attractive contract that they could trade. So in theory, there is still more moves. They still have $9 or $10 million in cap space to just straight up sign more players plus accept. The NBA salary cap is harder to figure out than the gross national debt of this country. Like, I really don't understand how to figure it out, but you know what I'm saying. But there are ways for this team to still continue to add more pieces. And I always tell everybody, you don't win a title in any sport on the first day of free agency. You don't win a title with one trade. You got to wait to see the finished product game 1 of the season. So I am waiting to judge whether we are better than Boston until game 1 happens, 2 months from now or whatever it is.
Fair enough.
Because there is still the option to make more moves. So we'll see. Right now, we are definitely not better than Boston. We might not be better than New York. We might not be better than a couple other teams in the Eastern Conference at this moment. But let's wait to see what else Daryl Morey does. Let's wait to see what other veterans are willing to sign a 1-year contract on a minimum contract to come here to play with Paul George. Look, you got the Olympics starting soon. Joel Embiid's going to be on the national stage with a lot of big names. Maybe there's some recruiting going on. Maybe there's some things happening. I'm not ready to say we're not going to be better than Boston. I just know I can say we're not better than Boston right now.
Yeah. Do you have any faith at all in Daryl Morey? It's like I look at this guy and I'm like, what has he done? What has he done to justify his job?
With all this, everyone keeps talking that Daryl Morey had this blank canvas this offseason. I said before the blank canvas starts being painted on that they should have fired him. I didn't like the signing when they hired him in the first place.
Yeah.
I said it very boldly that there was, I don't know if you remember, the first day on the job for Daryl Morey and Doc Rivers together, there was this picture taken of them at this desk with this huge picturesque window behind them. They had a laptop open, and it looked like they were getting to work to build a winner. And I said that this was going to be the worst decision in the last 20 years for the Sixers. And so far, I'm right. So I have zero faith that he could do it. But as a fan, I have no choice. I mean, I don't get to fire him. So I've got to kind of just hope that he can pull some magic out and figure the right things out. And that the players, because let's be honest, Paul George, on paper, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid are one of the 3 best trios in the NBA. The real work is building around those 3 guys. So we'll see what he can do. But I have no faith that he's going to do the right thing.
Yeah, no, neither do I. So was the process a failure? Can we say that? Or can we say it yet?
People misunderstand what the process was. The process was not a failure. People think the process was winning a championship. If you really go back and listen to Sam Hinkie talk in the early parts of the process was about acquiring assets so that you have the ability to acquire superstars to put together. And they've had enough assets to get James Harden. They've had enough assets to get Paul George. They've had the assets to, I mean, it didn't work out, but they spent a lot of money on Al Horford. That was part of the process. The process was acquiring assets. That's what it was. So in my opinion, the process wasn't a failure because they were capable of constantly, multiple times, they were able to trade for Jimmy Butler. That was what the process was all about, acquiring the assets to acquire the players. So in that sense, if my theory on what the process was is accurate, then the process was 100% the success.
Okay, I see your point. I see. Maybe it's not so much the process.
I know fans don't want to hear it that way, but that's what if you really go back and listen to old school Sam Hinkie talk,
Yeah.
that's what the process was going to be about.
Yeah. Well, so I guess the process on the surface, to use your point of view, was successful, but the drafts have been. You think about some of the busts that the Sixers have had, and if they weren't busts, where this team could be right now.
The results of the process weren't. The process was successful. The end result from what the process brought us just didn't work out. You know what I mean? So whether it's draft picks, I mean, you say some draft picks didn't work out. That's fair. But let's be honest, 2 of our draft picks have worked out phenomenally. One in Tyrese Maxey, who I think will one day be one of the faces of the league, of the NBA. His smile, his energy, his personality,
yeah,
is just so infectious. I even dabbled with the idea of considering wanting to trade Joel Embiid and making Tyrese Maxey the center point and the center of this team and organization. I don't want to trade Joel Embiid. Let me throw that out there. I don't want to do it. But I contemplated that idea because of that. And the other Sixers draft pick, Mikal Bridges, is a superstar. Somebody just traded 5 first-round draft picks and players to get him, to the New York Knicks. We had him in our back door, but Brett Brown had other ideas and wanted Zahiri Smith, so he boycotted what Elton Brand did and traded him away.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah.
But so technically, the draft process has worked twice. One of them is still here. One of them's not, unfortunately.
All right. Well, you said you don't want to trade Joel Embiid. There are those who do. There are those who do because, the window is closing with Embiid, and you could probably still get some value for him back at this point. So at what point do you give up and say, I mean, look, they just signed Paul George. It's not happening this season, obviously. But a couple years down the line, if they don't win a championship, at what point do you give up and say, all right, we got to cut our losses and we got to start from scratch again?
I mean, I'd slightly say, like, I've told myself I'm going to go down with the ship and I'm going to ride it out with Joel Embiid till the end. But you know what? At this point, this year or next year is the year to do it.
Yeah.
Because after this year, I mean, he's 30 years old. He's got bum knees. He's got a bad back. We all know the style he plays makes him very, injury prone. I don't hate him getting in. Like, I don't want him to change who he is to protect himself. I want him to be that aggressive player. But if Mikal Bridges fetched 5 first-round picks, you could have theoretically gotten 5 first-round picks plus players that could step in and play now. And sometimes there's that old narrative. You got to take a step back to take 2 steps forward. If you're not going to do it, if you're going to do it, you do it now for this next season. And I think that there's going to come a point, because if you look at Paul George's career, stars have left him. He's been bounced around a lot. He's played in Indiana, Oklahoma City, LA. If it doesn't work out this year with Joel Embiid and Paul George, one or the other is going to ask out at the end of the season. And in my opinion, it'll be a lot easier to trade Joel Embiid going into the last year of his deal, because he's only got 2 years left on his contract right now. It'll be a lot easier to trade a player of his stature going into the last year of his deal than it would be 3 years of Paul George. So this is it. This is the last year. And then you really, really, really have to have that conversation if we can't get to the promised land this year with them.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Makes sense. All right, want to touch on some Eagles real quick before we wrap this up here today. So you had me on your show a while back, and you asked me my thoughts about the whole Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni dynamic. I want to turn that around and ask you: Are you worried at all about their relationship?
Zero worry whatsoever. Their relation, and this is not, if this is going to be the end of the show, this is a perfect full circle moment, because the conversation of their relationship being damaged is a product of the Philadelphia radio station culture of creating drama to create phone calls. It's a clickbait media thing. It's a clickbait thing in the world we live in. There is no problem. I just think that Jalen Hurts, people don't realize, Jalen Hurts went to the school of Nick Saban. Nick Saban makes you take a class, not an hour lecture, a class for a semester about how do you handle the media as a professional and as a football player and as an athlete, as a star. And he mastered that class. And Jalen Hurts just does not like to give out information in the media. And in the media, whether it was Jeff McClain or somebody on the radio, whether it was an Eskin or whoever else it was, saying that there was drama because he didn't like want to do jumping jacks and cartwheels to show his support of Nick Sirianni. I just think it's a made-up narrative. I think there's no problem there whatsoever. I think there's no issue there. I have full confidence in Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts being on the same page. Now, will we win a Super Bowl? I don't know. But I think they're on the same page. I think there's a good, strong working relationship there. They're just two different personalities. And Jalen Hurts is a very private, reserved guy, and he's not the rah-rah guy in front of the media. And it's made up to create drama, to create clicks, to create polls on Twitter. That's all it is. I really, Jason, I really, truly believe that. I really think it's a made-up problem. I really don't think it is any issue whatsoever.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with that. I'm wondering how much will last season hang over everybody's heads? I mean, how much, you could say that they maybe they have a chip on their shoulder, and that's a good thing. But then on the other end of the spectrum, how much does that linger in their minds? I mean, how do you think they come out? Do they come out on the right foot to start the season?
I think it lingers for sure, but I think it's a motivational factor. If you look at just the off season and the way Nick Sirianni has changed the way he manages OTAs, the way he's making a mandatory minicamp versus a voluntary minicamp, I expect changes to the way he manages what he does in training camp, which is only it's like 3 weeks away. I think it's the 23rd when they report 24th, something like that. I think it's going to motivate them to work harder, to be more disciplined. You've heard Nick Sirianni use the word working on the details more this offseason than ever before. So I think that is where these changes come into play. And I think it makes them maybe be a little, maybe they come out a little bit more motivated. Maybe they're more focused. At the beginning of the schedule is much more difficult than the later schedule. Maybe they come out and actually win some of these tougher games early because they're more focused on the details. And the details were lacking last year big time on this team for lots of different reasons. So I think it's a motivational factor, the way the season ended, to be different, to do things differently, to less Nick Sirianni pandering and more Nick Sirianni being a leader. Let's focus. Let's get down to business here. Maybe you see less basketball shots at camp and more drills being run. You know what I mean? So I think
sense.
It has a very positive influence on this group of guys.
All right. Before we wrap this up, I want to talk more about your show. You went to the trouble of wearing a Trending in the AM shirt just for the podcast here. So I know your show recently joined the Edge of Philly Sports Network. What's that been like? How has that changed? I mean, I know your show itself hasn't changed, but I guess you're more involved with the network itself, right? You're doing more things besides your show, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's great. And this is no knock on, I was with Philadelphia Sports Network for a while. No knock on them. Liam, Brian, Zach, the crew there, they're fantastic, but they're a website that just happens to have a YouTube page. And I was pretty much the only guy doing regular work on there. Edge of Philly Sports is a 7-day-a-week network, anywhere from 25 to 35 shows a week, depending on what sports are in season because of post-game shows. Like when the Flyers and Sixers are playing, there's upwards of 35 shows. It's just brought another audience to me. And I keep saying my goal is to make Trending the AM biggest morning show there is in Philadelphia. And I really mean that because I really, truly believe in what I said before. People want to have their voices heard and want their opinions heard. And this is not a knock on Edge of Philly either. If in a year or two, a bigger network wants to bring my show on, I will consider and contemplate it if it's the right move for me.
Sure.
Because I want my show to be put in front of as many eyes, as many ears as possible. So that I can really maybe to justify to see if what I think that people want their voices heard is really truly the case. So I'm out there just trying to promote that fans can have a better experience talking sports. And every person, Jason, I'm sure you have haters out there or trolls out there. We all have them.
Nobody hates me, Phil. Nobody
hates you.
Nobody hates me.
Yeah, the person that didn't like the way that you made them lose at trivia,
right.
So they don't hate you.
Yeah,
trust
right.
me, I know. I know from hosting trivia back in the day. There's always those too. The amount of DMs I get on a regular basis, because I leave my DMs open for everybody for lots of different reasons. The amount of DMs I get on the positive end of the equation of thank you, I appreciate you, listening to my opinion. When I get those DMs from strangers that I don't even know, it really motivates me more to continue doing what I do. I also do a fantastic golf podcast once a week called Fairway to Heaven on the Edge of Philly Sports Network. I love talking golf.
That's a
I'm a
great
huge
name.
golf guy. Funny side story, and I know you got to wrap this up, but
I
the
got
Live
time.
Golf Tour that's created by the Saudis, they started their own podcast this year, and they called it Fairway to Heaven. And I've been shouting out Live Golf for literally the entire golf season. How dare they steal my name? They better pay me some money since they're copying my name, because Fairway to Heaven. I've been doing Fairway to Heaven. It was the first podcast I ever did was Fairway to Heaven. I started that during COVID because golf was the first sport to come back from the COVID, shutdown. I love golf. I love talking golf. I love trying to figure out who's going to win each golf tournament. I have so much fun, and I met a very good friend, also a Jason. All my friends I've met through this are all named Jason. Which is kind of weird. We've been doing it now for 4 years, and we just absolutely love just sitting down, hammering out some golf talk, and just goofing around because it's a blast. So if you're interested in golf, give Fairway to Heaven a listen on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. as well.
That's awesome. And your show, Trending in the AM, it's every morning at 8 o'clock. And just
Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 9:30 every single day, no days off. I'm lucky to have a fantastic, supportive wife that even when we get big catering orders at the pizza shop, she goes in 2 hours early if necessary, just to make sure that I don't miss a show. When I go on vacation, I was in Mexico for our anniversary this past year. I brought all my equipment down, and I did them poolside or on my balcony in my hotel room. I take no days off from this because
oh my gosh,
that's how dedicated I am to this. I love doing this. This literally gives me Saturdays and Sundays. I don't normally do shows.
Yeah,
and I miss. I really like. I still see myself waking up at 6:30 every morning, even on a day off, just because it's such a part of my life.
Your wife is a saint. She lets you do the show when you're on vacation. Seriously?
Absolutely. I literally we travel as cheaply as possible. Like, we don't fly first class. We don't stay in suites or anything like that. I have to pack an extra suitcase just to bring my laptop, my soundboard, my microphone, and I do. So I literally have to budget my packing of my equipment.
An extra baggage fee.
In every vacation budget. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll tell you what, and I've told you this before off the air. The reason that I enjoy what you do, okay, you've got great energy, you've got great enthusiasm, but beyond that, you're not a phony, you're real, and it's obvious you do your homework. You know your sports, you know your stuff, and your love of sports just comes through, and I know you've told me, and I hope you don't mind me saying this. You probably share this with your audience, but I know you've always thought about doing a sports talk show on the radio, and I think either one of the two sports stations in town would benefit from having you there, big time.
I appreciate that. I know you said that, and it's something that I definitely have to work on being better at, accepting compliments. I know it makes me feel very uncomfortable when people compliment me, but on the other things you said there. And I said this to you off the air, and I said it, on my show this morning when we were recording this. My father passed away of cancer when I was 18 years old,
right,
25 years ago. But he taught me a lot. He brought my sports fandom out and stuff like that. But one of the things that he really taught me about was, and the thing that's really rung true, is just to make sure that you can look yourself in the mirror. Don't worry about what other people think. Be able to look yourself in the mirror when you get up in the morning and respect the person you see, not what other people see, what you see. And maybe if I didn't respect myself enough, maybe if I fell, into that clickbait era, and maybe if I would say crazy hot takes all the time, maybe I would be on the radio right now. Maybe I would have a bigger following right now. But I want to respect myself, and I want to be able to look myself in the mirror. So that's why I just do things in the most, honest, energetic, but honest and most realistic way possible every single morning, because I want to make him proud, but I want to be able to look myself in the mirror and be like, yeah, I think I'm a good person. I hope I am. And that's really what motivates me and drives me every day to do it the way I do it.
Well, you know what? I cannot think of a better way to end this than with that. That was perfectly said. And I you know what? again, not to be corny, but I do believe that those who pass on are looking down on us, and I know that he's got to be very proud of what you're doing. Phil, you're good.
I hope so.
Oh, I know so. You're a good friend. I got to get out to Kennett Square and get some pizza one day. You've got to come out to Warminster and do some trivia on a Tuesday night. And but do you carry that with you wherever you go?
I have an extra menu everywhere I go, just in case I need to take a picture or hand it to somebody.
See,
look, I'm a businessman.
I was going to say,
if I can make an extra buck anyway, I will.
That is a brilliant businessman right there. So it is trending in the AM. He is Phil Steifel. Check him out. Edge of Philly Sports Network. You can check it out on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, and it is a great show. Phil, always a pleasure, buddy. We got to do this again soon, okay?
Anytime. Thank you very much for having me on.
You got it. And thank you for checking out episode 18 of the Philly Sports Convo. We'll see you next time.